Hello everybody, welcome back to another video by Jay Bowman. Today I'm looking again at one of my favourite synths, which is the Korg Prologue. It's the Korg Prologue 16 I've got here, and this is going to be a very focused video. I got a question the other day about the LFO. I nearly said LFOs, but of course there's only one LFO in the Prologue. I got a question about the LFO and the various different modes that there are for the LFO, and it's a topic. I mean, obviously modulation is something I've covered before when looking at the Prologue. I have a previous video looking at the way you can use the arpeggiator, etc., to try and get more modulation options. And in that video, I just kind of skipped over the LFO itself and these options. And I thought it might be useful for some people if I just have a more detailed look at the LFO and what you can do with it. Now, I've got the camera focused very tightly on the edit screen here because that's where a lot of the action is. You can't see the keyboard or the rest of the panel, but what I want to do is look, as I say, very closely at the modulation options for the LFO and see what we can do with them. So I've got an init patch here, which is just a sawtooth wave, as you can see from the screen. Just playing VCO 1, the VCF is completely open, etc., etc., bog standard init patch. So what I'm going to do is go into edit mode and push the fifth button here, which takes you to the LFO. So the first option is LFO target. And I'm not going to look in detail about that because that's pretty obvious. You've just got these options. You can have all, so the LFO is targeting all of the, all three of the VCOs and the digital engine. So that's option 1, all. Option 2 is both VCOs. Option 3 is just VCO 2. And option 4 is multi. I don't know why there's no option to just target VCO 1. That could be useful for the sync, but it's just not there for some reason. And I think the only slight gotcha possibly with that is that obviously if you are targeting with the LFO, if you're targeting cutoff, then choosing all or choosing VCO2 I don't think it's going to have any impact because obviously the filter is for the whole voice, both VCOs. Let me just try that, double check that, but I think that's something I've noticed in the past, which is pretty obvious really, but let's have a look. Okay, so I've set up there. You can hear there the LFO is modulating the cutoff. So it's on all. I'll turn up VCO2 and I'll turn up the multi-engine, which is on noise. So obviously you can hear there the filters affecting all of them. If I change to VCO 1 and 2, there you can hear it's still affecting the noise, obviously. And so VCO 2. See, I turned down the noise, turned down VCO 2, and it's still affecting VCO 1, of course. That's because, as I've said before, all the voices go into the filter. Now, there is a way of changing that, obviously. Let me just, I'm getting slightly off topic here, but let's see. If we go into this option, sorry, the 6th button, and there's a way of navigating the menus which makes it slightly faster. If you push Shift and the button, then you go backwards. And here you can see the multi-routing is pre-VCF. So that means the digital engine is going through the filter. Obviously, if I turned that from pre-VCF to post-VCF, then, sorry for that, the loudness of that, but as you can hear, all of a sudden, the noise is not being affected by the LFO modulating the filter cutoff because the digital engine is escaping the filter altogether, which is a very useful feature, which I wish they would introduce, for example, on the Kodamo Mask 1, which is one of my other favourite synths. That would make, that would be very useful. So anyway, I'll go back to the init patch now and go back into this menu. So got slightly off topic there, looking at this option. That's not really where I wanted to look. So that's the targeting of the LFOs. Now, as far as I'm aware, that's the only kind of interesting feature of that. Obviously, the fact that, you know, if you're modulating pitch or shape, then you can choose between the different options for the VCOs and the noise. But if you're modulating filter, then you're stuck with it modulating everything, unless you use the option to take the multi-engine out of the filter, have it go post-filter, and then you've got the choice there. You can have the filter modulating or rather the LFO modulating the filter, catching the VCOs, but not the multi-engine. So that's enough on option 1. Option 2, LFO key sync. Now this is interesting. So if I turn the VCF down, and I will use the LFO to modulate filter. So obviously with key sync on, every time I press a key, you can hear consistently there the LFO is starting from the same phase and it's triggering. And you can use this as a kind of almost like an additional envelope. Obviously, the Prologue has two, you might say 2.5 envelopes. You've got the amp envelope, you've got the filter envelope, and you've also got a pitch envelope, but the pitch envelope shares the controls of the filter envelope. So that's why I say 2.5 envelopes. Now, depending on how you set up the LFO, you can almost use it as an additional envelope with the key sync on. I say almost because this has this is kind of a paraphonic effect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down a chord. I'm going to slow down the rate. I'm going to switch the LFO shape to sawtooth as well. So what I'm doing there is I'm holding down a chord in one hand and I'm triggering the LFO again using my other hand. So that's quite an interesting effect that you can get using the LFO in that way. You might say it should just be similar to just playing the chord with your with your hand manually, which is what I'm doing there. But you can hear it's somewhat different. So I'm going to. So that's me just playing the chord manually. Now let's try, listen to me holding it down and then triggering the envelope or triggering the LFO with key presses. It's a different effect. I'm not sure I'd find a particular use for it, but that's there if you want to explore it. So, so I was using that there, the LFO with the filter cutoff. So it's a kind of paraphonic key sync LFO. And it's a useful option to have on my Mask 1, for example, which in some ways has far more complex modulation options than the Prologue. The LFOs are always free running, and it would be nice to have the option, as you have here on the Prologue, which is a very simple synth in terms of modulation, to change between free running and key syncs. So what happens if we turn key sync off, which I'll do now? Obviously, as I press the key, it's not re-triggering the LFO. The LFO is free running. where I land in terms of the phase of the LFO just depends on what the timing is of the LFO, the rate, and when I press the key. Okay, so it's useful to have the options. You can choose between free running or key sync. So then you've got this this third option in the menu. So if I press the edit key again, we get to the voice sync. So previously we had key sync. So this next option is voice sync. So if I turn that, so it's on by default. If I turn it off, you can hear there's no difference. So that's key sync, that's voice sync off. Let's turn it on. So the question I got was, or at least this is the answer I gave. The question was, what is the impact of this voice sync? How do you get it to do anything? Because the great thing about the Prologue is you've got essentially, in the 16 voice version, you've got 16 LFOs really here, or 16, yeah, it's a polyphonic 16 LFOs. But at the moment, even if I turn voice sync off, they're all 16 are playing locked together. So you're essentially hearing it as a monophonic LFO, even though it is in fact a polyphonic LFO. So how do we change that? So it's a bit counterintuitive, and I'm not sure what Korg were really thinking if they meant people to use it this way, but this is the way that I found to use it. So you need to go back and turn key sync on. So we've got key sync on, but voice sync off. So in theory now we've got 16 independent LFOs, one per voice, because they're not synced. And each key will trigger the start of a new LFO. So let's play that. So that was all 10 fingers, and you could hear there that we have now, we had 10 LFOs going at the same rate, but out of phase with each other. So that's great. Now, if I turn key sync off, but I've left voice sync off, now those LFOs are free running. They won't be re-triggered with key press, but they are out of phase with each other. That's great, until you realize that, okay, I used 10 fingers to get 10 independent LFO phase triggers, but LFOs 11 to 16 are still going to be in phase because I couldn't start the trigger of those. So how do you deal with that? I think one option, maybe if I had a sustain pedal set up, then I could do it that way. Something I do, because I don't normally have a sustain pedal hooked up. One thing I do is, and you can't see this because it's elsewhere on the panel, but on the Prologue 8, you don't have that problem, obviously, because you've got, most people have 8 fingers they can use. On the 16, most people don't have 16 fingers. So what I do is I put the sub on this button over here. So activate the bitimbral mode. So now you have 2 8-voice synths essentially. And I shift the balance all the way to main. And now I will start the triggering process again instead. So I will do key sync on, and I will use my 8 fingers to trigger 8 different start points for the LFOs. Okay, and now I turn key sync off. So there I've got 8 independent LFOs running on this layer, and I think you can hear how you can use that for musical effects with the filter. If you use it for the pitch envelope instead, then you can use it to get a kind of wonky, out of tune effect. Now let me try that. So I've changed the LFO so it's modulating pitch. I'm going to reduce the intensity a bit, change the rate a bit. So obviously if I increase the intensity, you can hear that they're just going completely all over the place. But obviously if you reduce it to quite a low level, then you can use it to get the voices just kind of slowly drifting in and out of tune. Yeah. Yeah, so you can hear there it's a bit more subtle. Or you can make it more extreme like that. Okay, so I think that's all. I think that's all there is really to look at with these LFO options. You know, you've got key sync and you've got voice sync, and essentially key sync gives you obviously either free running LFOs. I'm using the S and LFOs in brackets there. So key sync off, you have free running LFOs. Key sync on, you have key triggered LFOs. Voice sync off or on until you unleash or stagger the phase of the independent LFOs. This voice sync option has no effect. And I've shown you how to do that, how to stagger the phase of the LFOs. Once you do that, you can have free running polyphonic LFOs. So that's all there is to look at, I think. So hopefully you found this video useful. Please give me a like and a subscribe, and thanks for watching. I'll catch you on the next video. Goodbye.